Cincinnati at Pittsburgh, 37 over under, 2 backup quarterbacks. Is this just going to be one that we're going to avoid, or do you think there's any sort of interest in this matchup?
I think if you'd asked us a couple of weeks ago, it definitely would have felt like a game which we completely wanted to avoid. But Jake Browning has made this a game which you can't really ignore. The Bengals just refuse to lie down and be done for the season, whether it's Jake Browning keeping them alive, even though their defense isn't up to playoff standards, isn't up to the kind of standards that we've had in previous years. And now they've lost DJ Reader, their defensive tackle, which opens this up to play into the one thing which Pittsburgh have done okay at times in recent weeks, and that's run the ball. So are we going to see Najee Harris, who between weeks 9 and 10 was a top 12 back, but since then was RB 41, 13, 24, 36, 73? Or are we going to see more of Jaylen Warren, who, speaking for my best ball shares, I would love to have a Jaylen Warren spike week right about now. We saw last week when Najee Harris fumbled the ball, the team were completely ready to put it in the hands of Jaylen Warren. And if George Pickens had felt like blocking, then Jaylen Warren would have had a touchdown, and I would have been celebrating a lot more. So yeah, I think the Bengals, they ranked 29th on run defense before they lost DJ Reader. So now the Steelers really should just be looking at this game and going, okay, we can really lean into this and run the ball. They're starting Mason Rudolph, Mason Rudolph's greatest contribution to the NFL so far has been getting hit in the head with a helmet. He is not an NFL caliber quarterback. He's not done anything of note when he has played. So I don't think you can suddenly start talking yourself into a situation where George Pickens and Deontay Johnson are going to be incredible. Deontay Johnson has scored 3 touchdowns in a row, which, given the kind of touchdown drought he had last year, is worth mentioning and celebrating. The Bengals are awful against the tight end position. They allow the most points across the league to the position. But Pat Freiermuth, after that game where he played with Kenny Pickett and they really opened up the middle of the field after firing Matt Canada, he had 9 catches for 120 yards in that game. Since then, he's had 9 catches for 63 yards, been the tight end 21, 25, 33. So I don't think you can really count on any of the Steelers' pass catching options. I'd start Najee Harris if I had to. I would start Jaylen Warren if I was looking for a ceiling play. On the Bengals side, I think playing T. Higgins feels like a fairly safe bet with Jamar Chase ruled out. I think Tyler Boyd isn't a player that I've got any confidence in. He's really done very little this season and just looks to be just heading towards the tail end of his career. I like Chase Brown as kind of like a real dart throw, but I don't think we can count on enough to start in any leagues unless you're playing in really deep leagues. And Joe Mixon's been pretty steady. So, yeah, hopefully Jake Browning plays well and we get a decent game. But in the AFC North, you're always just a whisper away from things turning ugly.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like this could eventually turn into a somewhat of a defensive affair. On the Chase Brown side, now, we talked about Chase Brown in May, in June as one of my favorite sleepers. I talked him up a few weeks ago, and it feels like the hype is getting there now. I'm still viewing him as more of a 2024 play than a play perhaps this year. How deep are you? You said deep leagues. Are we talking kind of RB3 territory, or do you think he's still outside that top 36?
So he's been an RB3 in each of the last 3 games. His last 3 finishes have been RB30, RB10, and RB34. Obviously, RB34, you're talking like 8 PPR points. That's nothing to brag about. But we play in some leagues where you're starting 2 running backs and then you're starting 3 flex position players as well as your super flex. So like in those leagues, I've got no problem putting Chase Brown in because we've seen over the last 3 weeks that the Bengals really want him to have a role. He's at opportunity shares of 25%, 29%, and 40%, which show that he's growing into this role and the Bengals are trusting him more and more. Where he still needs to catch up is that kind of stuff, when TJ Watt is firing off the offensive line and coming towards Jake Browning, do they need a running back in who can pass protect well? And is that going to slow down how much Chase Brown can play? So I don't mind it. It's not something I'd be looking to do in more conventional leagues or even in DFS. I think unless you're playing showdown slates, the showdown slates on Saturday will be worth taking your dart throws at Chase Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the T. Higgins splits with and without Jamar Chase. So with Jamar Chase in the lineup over the last 2 years, he's averaged 7 targets, 4.2 receptions, 12.7 PPR points. Without Jamar Chase, he's averaged 9 targets, 6.5 receptions, and 18.8 PPR points, which is like high-end wide receiver 1 territory. So as long as you've got some trust in Jake Browning, I think fire up every single share you got a T. Higgins, because I think he could be in for a big spike week.